Well, good afternoon. It's Saturday, and I was up here at church just getting ready for Sunday morning, and I ran across something that I just feel overwhelmingly compelled to make a comment on. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you now, and then make some comments. It is a clip from a podcast from CrossPolitic, and I think that will find, just as I did, that what is contained within this podcast is really incredible. And I think it's shocking that this was ever published and that it is still online. I'll play it and then just make a few comments. I don't think I need to go into depth on this, but I'll just let the video speak for itself.
He actually talks in there about the difference between the older way of viewing institution was that the institution existed to form and shape us. But now with this individual expression idea, we've turned institutions into platforms upon which we express ourselves. And really, we've done that kind of with the sacraments. We've done that with our
It's all exists to serve me.
Yeah, it all exists. It's all a chance for me to kind of express who I am. We've done that with our corporate worship. We've done that.
Think of the definition that you've heard of baptism.
I'd say up into that part, okay, we're doing fine. And, for many years, I have experienced, Paedo Baptist making little, underhanded comments here and there saying, well, you're not really Reformed, or if you're Baptist, you can't really claim to be Reformed, when, just as a reminder, the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith is something that was overwhelmingly not creative. About 4% of it is creative, was something that was outside of the other documents that it utilized. It overwhelmingly utilized the Savoy Declaration, and it utilized the Westminster Confession of Faith. And they did that on purpose to communicate, we do believe in these Reformed truths. However, we have a different view when it comes to baptism and our understanding of the covenants, and also in the area of ecclesiology. So I'm really used to this, but I will say that this is one of the most incredible jumps that I've ever seen a Paedo Baptist do in making a charge against Baptist theology.
Your life, right? It's an outward sign of an inward truth. It's a way that I stand up and say to the world, I'm a Christian now, right? That is a new modernist understanding of our selfhood, that we're coming into the world, and the world said, hey, I can run.
Okay, so his statement there is Baptist theology on baptism is a declaration of something individually about you, and something that has happened within you. It's a declaration outwardly of what has happened inwardly. Well, we would see this idea in chapter 29 of the London Baptist Confession of Faith. It says, baptism is an ordinance of the New Testament ordained by Jesus Christ to be unto the party baptized a sign of his fellowship with him, his death, his resurrection, of his being grafted into him, of remission of sins, of giving up unto God through Jesus Christ, and to walk in a newness of life. And so it's certainly something that is inwardly, and it's also expressing things about where the person stands positionally in relation to the Lord Jesus Christ and in relation to his church. Let's look at what the Westminster Confession of Faith says, chapter 28, paragraph 1 on baptism. Baptism is a sacrament of the New Testament ordained by Jesus Christ, not for solemn admission of the party baptized into the visible church, but also to be unto him a seal, a sign and a seal of a covenant of grace, of his engrafting into Christ, of regeneration, of remission of sins, of giving up unto God through Jesus Christ, to walk in the news of life, which sacrament is by Christ's own appointment to be continued in his church until the end of the world. And I would make this point, although the Baptists and Presbyterians depart in regard to the baptism of, babies, children of members of Christ Church, they still do practice believers' baptism. And when they're practicing believers' baptism, they are communicating in that baptism something in regard to what has happened to that person inwardly. And that is something that is there contained in that first paragraph of the Westminster Confession of Faith there in chapter 28. Let's go ahead and continue and see how far down they go down this wormhole.
That definition of selfhood. And they've been running down this road a long ways. And now, because of the paganism getting to the point where you need a phallic symbol to latch onto, you know, that the for your identity, right? This is what we run into. But the reality is, this is just American Baptist theology secularized.
If I could, you know,
And I would like to communicate something here as well, that this confession that I'm holding is known as the Second London Baptist Confession of Faith. It existed prior to even the creation of the United States. And so we had colonies in the United States when this confession was created. And so to say that this theology is something that is purely American is historically inaccurate. I mean, it's absurd to make such a jump that the theology contained within this confession is in some way an American idea.
another issue too. So you have the individual.
I can't help but think that I do hope that David Shannon there is scratching his head and questioning what his brothers here on the podcast are saying. This just isn't lining up. I'm sorry.
That you're talking about.
So that's where that ends. So basically, transgenderism is something that is the fruit of hyper Baptist theology. So I guess these are all these transgender people coming out claiming to have a gender that does not align with how they were designated when they were born, claiming something that is inconsistent with their biological makeup and their DNA, that this is basically the logical outworking of Baptist theology. I just find this to be one of the most absurd statements from a Paedo-Baptist in regard to Baptist theology. Y'all have so many better arguments that you can make, and to make an argument like this is absolutely not helpful. I find it to be incredibly offensive. David Shannon sat in my church and recorded part of a documentary, and interviewed two men that held to Baptist theology, and the idea that either of those men who have stood up so strongly against transgenderism and these woke ideologies, it's some way to argue that the theology that undergirds them within their confession is in some way leading others to hold to woke ideas, and transgenderism is just completely absurd. I would encourage these men to remove this podcast, and I would encourage those that are friends with them to discourage them from publishing anything like this again. That y'all are better than this, and this is just this is absurd and it's offensive. So God bless. I hope you have a great Lord's Day tomorrow.